Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Kevin Blekicki Show. This will be episode number 48. Thank you for tuning in this week. We have another amazing show for you. We are going to talk about the New York Mets offseason. They've made some offseason acquisitions. I will give you my input, and I will discuss whether or not I think that David Stern's plan and idea for this team is something that I can get on board with, and how I think the Mets offseason has gone so far. We're also going to talk about the Gamecock women's basketball team. They've had a very interesting week. They lose on the road to Oklahoma in overtime. They get blown out in overtime, by the way. And then they come back on Sunday and absolutely wipe the floor with number 5 Vanderbilt at home. Huge win for them. They only dropped from number 2 to number 3 in the rankings. I'll break down that game. And we're also going to talk about some NFL news. Somehow, some way, Bill Belichick is not a first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't understand that. We'll talk about that, as well as Shedeur Sanders making the Pro Bowl for the AFC as a replacement. But of course, we have to start off talking about the matchup that we have in Super Bowl 60 between the New England Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks. As a diehard Jets fan, this is the worst case scenario because on one hand you have the New England Patriots who are our sworn enemies. There's not a single team on this planet that I hate more than the New England Patriots. They have tortured me my entire life. I've had to see them win Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl while my team is always in the doghouse and one of the most embarrassing laughing stocks in the NFL. And they're the cream of crop organization. It is 100% out of jealousy. I wish I was a Patriots fan, but I hate them. And I will be rooting every single molecule of my body against them in 2 weeks in Santa Clara. And then on the other side, we have the Seattle Seahawks, who are led by quarterback Sam Darnold, who the Jets drafted in the 2018 NFL draft, a draft that they could have had both or either Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. They could have drafted either of those quarterbacks. They could have even had Baker Mayfield, but they drafted Sam Darnold, who ended up being in the Super Bowl, just not as a member of the Jets. They had the right guy. They just weren't able to develop him. And, Sam Darnold got to a Super Bowl before Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. So there is something to be said about that. But I'm not looking forward to this Super Bowl. I am looking forward to the musical acts. Green Day is one of the bands that I listened to the most growing up. Huge Green Day fan. They'll be doing like the opening ceremony. I hope it is super political and super anti-Trump. I hate this administration, and I really hope that they use every second that they can to crap all over this garbage administration. And then you're going to have Bad Bunny at halftime. Now, I couldn't name a single Bad Bunny song other than that one that he made with Cardi B a while back. I'm not familiar with his music. His music just doesn't come across my timeline. I don't have anything against him. I just don't really know anything about him. But I do know that he's Puerto Rican. I do think that he is planning on wearing a dress. I do know that he's going to be doing the entire thing in Spanish, which is going to piss off a large number of this country, and I'm very excited for that. I'm going to probably have to log into Facebook again. I barely use that site, but I do it just to check in on my conservative relatives and just see what the general outrage is, and it's always a good time. But as far as the game is concerned, obviously I'm going to have a rooting interest in the Seattle Seahawks. I have nothing against Sam Darnold. Congratulations to him. He's a great guy. It just wasn't meant to be with the Jets. The Jets are a dumpster fire of an organization. They have never shown the ability to develop a quarterback. So Sam Darnold was the quarterback that can take you to a Super Bowl. It's just that the Jets aren't the team that can bring out the best in him. So we're also going to break down these matchups that led into this game, the Super Bowl. First, we'll start off with the AFC Championship game. It was a great game, close 10-7 game by the Patriots. The weather was a heavy factor in this game. The snow was piling up. The winds were howling. It was very much a game of who could run the ball better and move it down the field, because the Broncos could have won this game. They had 2 field goal opportunities, and they missed both of them. One of them was actually blocked. But, this was an opportunity for the Broncos to get back to the Super Bowl for the first time in 10 years. And Jared Stidham was the starting quarterback, and it wasn't great, but the Broncos had every opportunity to win this game. If this is a game in maybe November, where it's still probably cold, but it might be less windy and there's no snow, I think this is a game that the Broncos win. The defense is good. Will Lutz is a good kicker, and I think they have a better shot. Obviously, I don't think that Drake May goes for less than 100 if it's sunny and 65 degrees out, but it was cold. The elements were against him. And you got to give credit where credit is due. Drake May made the plays that he needed to when his team needed him to make them. And now they're going to the Super Bowl. However, 2 things can be true. The Patriots did, deserve to win that game. They made the plays that they had to. But also, they have objectively had one of the easiest paths to the Super Bowl that I've ever seen. They played the easiest strength of schedule of any team in the NFL. And then their playoff run consisted of playoff Justin Herbert, which isn't good. A West Coast guy coming to the East Coast in the elements usually doesn't bode well for the West Coast team. Then you have CJ Stroud and the Texans going on the road. And this Texans team was getting a lot of praise from the media, and a lot of people were saying that the Texans were one of the teams that we should look out for making a Super Bowl run because their defense is that elite. They just need CJ Stroud to move the offense and not lose in the game. And he did literally the opposite of that. He completely lost the game for the Texans. They are battling a lot of injuries, but CJ Stroud just absolutely handed the game to the Patriots. And then in the AFC Championship game, they went up against Jared Stidham. And Drake May did have to go up against that Broncos defense, but if the Broncos have Bo Nix, the Broncos probably win this game, and they're the ones going to the Super Bowl. But unfortunately, Bo Nix got injured at the end of the Bills game in the divisional round, and they had to roll with Jared Stidham. And you know what? Say what you want about Jared Stidham, he did not lose the game for this team. They just weren't able to push the ball down the field enough, and they missed some kicks, and Sean Payton didn't go for a field goal when there was an opportunity for him to do so. And now they're sitting at home. And then on the other side, we have the Seahawks, who went up against the Rams, who were another team that a lot of people were high on and thought were going to win the Super Bowl. But that environment, that crowd in Seattle was loud, as it always is. The 12th man showed up. And this was absolutely a shootout between the 2 quarterbacks. And both teams have incredible offensive weapons, and they were definitely both on display in this game. And Sam Darnold and the Seahawks ended up being victorious. So we had Matthew Stafford go 22 of 35 for 374 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. And Sam Darnold went 25 of 36 for 346 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. So that was one of the most epic QB battles that we've had in a long time. Both games were fantastic. There obviously was a lot more offense in the NFC Championship game as the Seahawks won 31-27. But for me, the clear rooting favorite for me is obviously the Seahawks. There is no world in which I'm ever going to root for the New England Patriots in any scenario, much less win the Super Bowl. And I am very glad that the Los Angeles Rams in particular lost this game, because I've had a big beef with Davante Adams after the way that he trashed the Jets in one of the interviews a few weeks ago. He was basically saying, you got to bring your A game or you're going to end up sitting at home like the Jets. There was no reason for that. There was absolutely no reason for Davante Adams to throw the Jets under the bus like that. And part of the reason why it's very easy to get behind Sam Darnold and the Seahawks is that Sam Darnold hasn't trashed the Jets. It is very easy for him to just go out there and be like, yeah, I know I'm a great quarterback. I became great once I left the Jets. But that, that's not the reality of the situation. He went to the Jets. He wasn't successful there. He also went to the Panthers. He wasn't successful there either. He went to the Niners. He wasn't successful there either. He went to the Vikings there. He did have some success there, but ultimately failed in the playoffs. And then he finally grew into his own and has had success in Seattle. If you want to blame the Jets for not developing Sam Darnold, you also have to put the blame on the Panthers, the Niners, and the Vikings. Well, not so much the Vikings, because he actually played well and led them to the playoffs. But the Jets are going to get the lion's share of the ridicule for the way that they developed Sam Darnold, because they're the Jets and they're the laughingstock of the NFL. But I wish nothing but the best to Sam Darnold and the Seattle Seahawks. They easily have my pick and vote for winning the Super Bowl. And the reason why they got to the Super Bowl, I think, was due in large part to the failures of Sean McVay. And I don't really pay attention to other people's opinions. I think a lot of the morning talk shows are a bunch of garbage. I haven't heard a lot of people's opinions on this, so this is just my own. I think the Rams lost this game because of Sean McVay. There were multiple times where the Rams cut the deficit to 4 or to 5, I should say. And instead of going for 2 and cutting the game to a 3-point deficit and having an opportunity to just kick a field goal and tie the game, they ended up going for 1 point, cutting the deficit to 4, and as a result, had to score a touchdown. They literally were in the red zone. They were down by 4 points. They had to go for the touchdown because the field goal wouldn't help them. But if they had earlier in the game gone for 2, they could have just kicked the field goal and tied the game. So I think, it was a back and forth game. Shout out Jackson Smith-Njigba for the way that he went out. He was absolutely fantastic. Just carving up that the Rams defense, and he was a large reason why they ended up going to the Super Bowl. But that does it for this edition, this first part of the Kevin Blekicki Show. We will be back after these messages. We are back with more of the Kevin Blekicki show. And we spent the first half of this show talking about the New England Patriots and their journey to the Super Bowl, back to the Super Bowl, I should say. And we have to talk about their former head coach, Bill Belichick, who was a large part of that dynasty. But we had some very shocking news come out today as Bill Belichick did not make the Hall of Fame. He is not a first ballot Hall of Famer, which is probably one of the most shocking headlines that I've ever seen, probably since the Luka trade. I mean, I really cannot wrap my head around this. The fact that Bill Belichick is not a Hall of Famer is insane. Like, I'm a D1 Patriots, Tom Brady, Bill Belichick hater. I hate Bill Belichick with a burning passion. Nothing brought me more joy than to see him fail at North Carolina. Um, I think obviously between him and Brady, Brady was more the reason for the success as he left Belichick and won a ring in Tampa. And Bill Belichick hasn't had any success since Tom Brady left him. But that being said, I mean, Bill Belichick has 8 Super Bowls. He's second all time in wins in NFL history. He is the most playoff wins in NFL history. This guy is one of the most important figures in NFL history. And the fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame on the first ballot is genuinely insane. I know that there's some talks of whose dynasty, was it his dynasty or was it uh, Tom Brady's? I think that's just really reductive and it doesn't really accomplish anything. They were both important pieces to that puzzle. And I don't think that if either of them were not in that position that the Patriots have the success that they get, I think that both of them played a huge role in that dynasty. However, this is just unacceptable that he's not in the Hall of Fame. He needed 40 out of 50 votes to get in, and he didn't get that. And I want a list of everybody who didn't vote for him because these people need to be known. These people need to be ridiculed. They need to be removed of their Hall of Fame vote immediately. And they, as the children say, don't know ball. I don't know how you can look at Bill Belichick's resume and not say that he is a Pro Football Hall of Famer. That is genuinely insane to me. But we are going to switch over to some more NFL topics as Shedeur Sanders has made the Pro Bowl for the AFC as a replacement. This is absolutely insane. On the season, Shedeur Sanders only had 7 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. He's going to be obviously replacing Drake May because he's going to be in the Super Bowl. Josh Allen and Justin Herbert also made it. But there's a noticeable absence as Trevor Lawrence didn't make the Pro Bowl. Now, to be fair, the Pro Bowl doesn't mean anything. And I think now, after Shedeur Sanders made it as a replacement, I think we can officially retire the Pro Bowl because it's not in Hawaii anymore. It's not the week after the Super Bowl, so the teams playing in the Super Bowl can still have their representatives play in the game. It's not a football game anymore. It's literally flag football. It's not even full contact NFL football. And it's just been reduced to flag football and a bunch of skill competitions, which, I mean, the skill competitions are pretty fun, but I'm not really that worked up about Shador Sanders making it to the Pro Bowl because the Pro Bowl doesn't mean anything. It's literally just something to add to your resume, and it's something that maybe you have uh, a bonus incentivized in your check in your contract. I think it's literally just nothing more than an accolade at this point. The game itself is a complete joke, and I don't understand why it's even still a thing. And that's the problem with a lot of the All-Star games nowadays. The only one that I think is still respectable is baseball. Baseball still It's still a baseball game. It's still 9 innings. It does get kind of annoying how every inning there's a new pitcher and it's a nightmare on your scorecard due to the amount of substitutions. Because you got to get everybody in there, everyone to get to play in the game. But hockey never really popped off. The All-Star game was never really that great. The NBA has never had a good All-Star game. It's always been unwatchable. They change the rules like every year to try and get people to watch it, and it just doesn't work. And now you don't have superstars doing the dunk contest or the 3-point contest or the Rising Stars or whatever it is, and they literally had to get Mac McClung from the G League to be in the dunk contest. So it's an absolute joke what the NBA has become. And then you have the NFL with the Pro Bowl. It used to be AFC versus NFC the week after the Super Bowl in Hawaii. It used to have insane amounts of aura. And it's not even on a Sunday anymore. It's on a Tuesday, the middle of the week. It's a flag football game, and it's just so sad. It's so sad what it has been become to. Sean Taylor's big hit in the Pro Bowl is something we'll never see ever again, and it's a shame. So, yes, Shador Sanders making it to the Pro Bowl this season is an absolute joke. However, I mean, like, it's already been a joke, and I think this will be the final nail in the coffin that will end it. Now we switch over to the Gamecock women's basketball team. They knocked off number 5 Vanderbilt by a score of 103-74. This is coming off an overtime loss on Thursday to the number 18 ranked Oklahoma Sooners. And this was a game where I think that Vanderbilt never had a chance. Vanderbilt lost this game as soon as we lost on Thursday to Oklahoma. And I was watching the broadcast. They said that South Carolina hasn't lost back-to-back games since the 2018-2019 season. So that's going on 6 or 7 years. So we're talking about a long time where, you might get the best of Dawn Staley, but she's going to nip it in the bud real quick, and she's not going to make a big deal out of it, and it's not going to become a bigger issue. You like the fact that they haven't dropped back-to-back games since before the pandemic is genuinely insane. Shout out Michaela Blakes for dropping 23 points, and shout out Vanderbilt for their first 20-0 season to start the season in school history. Vanderbilt sports as a whole is up. Their basketball team is ranked in the top 20. Obviously, their women's team just lost their first game of the season. Vanderbilt football has been resurrected by Diego Pavia. So Vanderbilt sport, and their baseball team's always pretty good. Vanderbilt sports is on the rise. It's good for them, but They were 20-0. They beat LSU, they beat Michigan. They beat some good teams. However, this is the SEC. And while, we like to talk about college football being this, SEC dominated sport, it's really dominated in women's college basketball, as 9 of the 25 teams in the top 25 are from the SEC. And if you look at Charlie Cream's bracketology, the top 4 seeds, the 4 number 1 seeds, 2 of them are in the SEC, and they were South Carolina and Texas. So, and the other 2 are obviously UConn, who's undefeated and hasn't played anybody, and then the other team's UCLA. So half of the number 1 seeds are projected to be from the SEC. So we do run this. It does mean more. And we're going to finish things off talking about the New York Mets. They've made some moves since we last talked about them. They've acquired Freddie Peralta from they've acquired him, and Tobias Myers from the Brewers in exchange for Jet Williams and Brandon Sproat. They also traded for Luis Robert, and they traded away Luis Angel Acuna, a little Luis Angel action there. And they also signed Craig Kimbrell. Now, I've been referring to the Mets offseason as a Pepsi team, the Pepsi Mets. Just like when you go to a restaurant and you ask for Coke and they say, "Is Pepsi okay?" That's how I feel about this Mets offseason. We wanted Pete Alonso, but we got Jorge Polanco. We wanted Kyle Tucker, but we got Bo Bichette. We wanted to keep Brandon Nimmo. We got Marcus Semien. We wanted to keep Edwin Diaz, but we got Devin Williams. And we wanted Tarek Skubal. I never thought he was going to get moved this offseason. And I never thought the Mets were going to get him. We got Freddie Peralta. So it seems like across the board, with every move that we've made, we've gotten worse. And I think that if you run the simulation for the 2026 season for the New York Mets and you run 10 simulations, I think they missed the playoffs 8 out of the 10 times. If the Mets are going to win, not just get to the playoff spot, but maybe win the division, maybe compete for a World Series, they're going to need a lot of breaks to go their way. They're going to need a full, healthy season from their rotation. Yeah, Freddie Peralta, who's proven he's a good front-of-the-line starter. You have to have a full season from Kodai Senga. He has to dominate. He has to be great. You need the same thing from Sean Manaea and David Peterson. Maybe Jonah Tong comes up. I don't know if he'll start the season with the Mets, but he needs to be better than he was last year. And you need Nolan McLean to continue to be the pitcher that he was last season. If they get all of that, then maybe the bullpen won't be as highly taxed. And then, if their pitching improves, then that takes less pressure off the hitters. And one of their biggest issues last year was having a good defensive center fielder who was fast that couldn't hit. And they replaced him with a good defensive center fielder who is fast and can't hit. His best season was 2 years ago, and we hope that Luis Robert is able to find magic in the bottle again and regain some of that he had in Chicago. Every person that I hear that is excited about Luis Robert is trying to justify this trade by saying that he just wasn't trying in Chicago because they weren't good. That is a huge red flag, because if the Mets start off slow, or they have a 2 or 3 month period where they're struggling and they're out of it, is Luis Robert going to quit? Is he not going to try hard? That is one of the worst excuses for justifying a trade that I've ever heard. I'm not thrilled with this offseason. Like I said, if you simulate the season 10 times, I think maybe we get to the playoffs twice. I don't think we're going to win the division. I don't think we're going to come even close to competing with the Dodgers. But that's why you play the season. You never know what's going to happen. That does it for this edition of the Kevin Blekicki Show. You can follow me on social media on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram at Kevin Blekicki. If you like this video, you like this show, make sure you hit like and subscribe on YouTube, and we will talk to you again next week.